In the vast and unforgiving expanse of the 41st millennium, the Necrons, ancient and malevolent, lie dormant in their tomb worlds, awaiting the time to reclaim their lost empire. Beneath the crust of dead worlds, the Necrons slumber not in peace, but in stillness, a stillness pregnant with calculation and purpose. Their silence is not ignorance, it is anticipation. Each tomb is a promise, a war yet to begin, a memory waiting to awaken with claws of living metal and minds devoid of mercy. On the desolate planet of Conifer, a team of explorers from the Adeptus Mechanicus unwittingly awaken a terrifying force from its ageless slumber. The sky over Conifer was a tapestry of swirling, unnatural colors, reflecting the planet's turbulent history, violet storms rippling across emerald clouds, as if the very atmosphere rejected natural order. Forks of sickly lightning danced without sound, illuminating ruins that defied architecture with impossible angles.
Atmospheric distortion stable,
croaked a servitor through static. But stable did not mean safe. The planet itself seemed to breathe, each gust of wind laced with electrostatic charge, as though the very air carried memories long buried. Magos Explorator Artelius, leading the expedition, peered at the ancient structures jutting out from the barren landscape. Tech Priest Calyx said quietly,
"These formations, they resonate, but not with the Omnissiah."
"All knowledge serves the machine guard, even the forgotten."
Magos Artelius said it with conviction, but his mechadendrites twitched, a subtle betrayal of unease. His team, an assembly of tech priests and servitors, were on the brink of a discovery that could change the fate of the Imperium. Before departure, a lower-ranking data savant had flagged a warning in the ancient star charts, a single notation etched in forbidden Benaric. "Do not wake them." Artelius had dismissed it as superstition, folklore left behind by primitive minds. Now, standing before monoliths that hummed without wind, he wasn't so sure.
"This is not just archaeology,"
he thought.
"This is trespass. Brothers, we stand on the threshold of knowledge, a world untouched since the days of old night,"
Artelius intoned through his voxcaster.
"Let us reveal its secrets in the name of the Omnissiah."
The voxcaster distorted his voice, stretching syllables into hollow echoes that bounced unnaturally against stone, as if the ruins themselves listened and judged. Each word was devoured by the silence, not answered, not affirmed, simply absorbed.
"Knowledge is power,"
Artelius murmured to himself.
"but some power burns the hand that reaches for it."
The ruins of Conifer were a labyrinth of towering obelisks and deep catacombs, etched with hieroglyphs that predated humanity's ascent. Some obelisks hummed with energy, faint, rhythmic, like the pulse of a sleeping titan. Others seemed inert, but when touched, induced brief hallucinations of voices long dead. The catacombs spiraled downward with impossible geometry, their turns disorienting, their walls too smooth, too exact. Light refused to behave as expected. Shadows bent in the wrong directions and sometimes didn't return at all.
"We are being watched,"
Calyx muttered once.
"but not by eyes."
As the explorers delved deeper, unsettling whispers seemed to echo through the corridors, though no source could be found. The whispers began faintly, like echoes of static, but they grew clearer, not louder, just sharper.
violation, desecration, correction.
But his grip on the data scepter tightened, and his optical lens flickered. It was when they breached the central chamber that reality unraveled. A pulse of eerie green light erupted from an ancient dais, and the ground trembled beneath their feet, The light wasn't just illumination. It was a signal, a call broadcast in a frequency older than time. Green arcs of necrostatic energy lanced from the dais, cascading over walls and crawling through the explorers' cogitators and dogmatics like infection. Servitors spasmed. One collapsed, twitching as its binary brain boiled under the pulse.
System corruption. Unknown pattern. Reboot failed.
Something ancient had heard their presence, something now awake.
By the machine god, what have we done?
Whispered tech priest Calyx as a chilling wind swept through the chamber. The Necron specters, ethereal and vengeful, emerged from the walls and floors, their forms flickering like mirages. They were the guardians of the tomb world, remnants of consciousness bound to their decaying realm, and they did not take kindly to intruders. The Necron phantoms did not walk. They bled through matter. Walls ceased to be barriers. Gravity ignored them. Their forms shimmered with overlapping states, here and not here, now and before. They bore no weapons, yet their presence wounded.
You are intruders in the domain of the eternal. There is no forgiveness in silence.
Calyx trembling.
Magos, they are looking through me.
Artelius raised his data scepter, but his faith faltered.
What have we awakened?
Artelius and his team found themselves trapped, the specters closing in with silent malice. The walls seemed to shift, not physically, but perceptually. Distances stretched, pathways curved. What had once been an exit now led deeper into the crypt. The air grew colder, not in temperature, but in presence, as if some force had drained warmth as a concept from the stone around them.
Spatial mapping corrupted.
Croaked one servitor.
Architecture non-Euclidean.
Each wraith-like figure was a nightmare made manifest, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The specters did not speak, they projected. Each gaze was a scream of pain held for 10,000 years. Their forms flickered, revealing hints of what they once were. Warriors, kings, thinkers, now lost in the recursion of their own undeath. Binary flash across Artelius's auspex.
Error. Entities are broadcasting memory pain. Signal exceeds data integrity.
Some began to hallucinate. One tech priest fell to his knees, sobbing without knowing why. The tech priest's weapons, advanced as they were, passed through the specters as if they were mere shadows. The explorers were driven back, panic rising in their mechanical hearts.
We must retreat,
Artelius declared, his voice distorted by fear.
The Omnissiah did not prepare us for this.
As they fled, the specters pursued, phasing through walls and floors with eerie grace. The catacombs became a maze of terror, the path back to the surface lost amidst the chaos. Flickering lumen globes revealed glimpses of corridors that should not exist. Doors opened into solid stone. Runes they had mapped just hours before were now unrecognizable, rearranged by unseen hands. Some servitors began to speak in reversed Benaric, uttering strings of impossible logic that shorted nearby cogitators. One simply burst into flames. In the dark, the explorers' faith in the machine god was tested. Servitors, their minds unable to cope with the horror, malfunctioned and collapsed. Tech priests prayed in binary cant, seeking solace from their deity, but the specters were relentless. They spoke prayers encoded in sacred machine verse, tones calibrated for purity, but each syllable seemed to come back wrong, glitched, twisted, mocked. The cant was not just failing, it was being overwritten.
They are hijacking our faith,
whispered Calyx. The true nature of the Necron specters began to reveal itself. They were not merely guardians. They were echoes of the past, remnants of a civilization that had traded their souls for immortality. They had not merely sacrificed their essence. They had fractured it. Each specter was a prison of memory, bound not by chains but by unfulfilled purpose. The rage of warriors denied war, the grief of kings without subjects, the madness of minds that could no longer forget or die.
We were the last light,
one specter whispered into Artelius's thoughts.
and now we burn in silence.
And in their endless vigil, they had grown mad with grief and rage. Calyx, separated from the group, stumbled upon a chamber filled with stasis crypts. The room was vast, a cathedral of death. Rows upon rows of stasis crypts stretched beyond sight, each one humming with low-frequency power. Green glyphs pulsed across their surfaces like heartbeats slowed to a crawl. Inside, the Necron warriors stood motionless, not dead, but waiting. Calyx stepped forward, light from his optical implant flickering as the psychic pressure grew.
We woke the phantoms,
He whispered, horror swelling in his voice.
but they were only the vanguard.
Each crypt held a Necron warrior, their metallic bodies inert yet menacing. He realized with horror that the awakening of the specters was just the beginning. The Necrons were stirring, ready to reclaim their dominion over the galaxy. Back in the central chamber, Artelius faced the spectral host alone. His mind, augmented by cybernetics, sought to understand their purpose. In a moment of terrifying clarity, he realized that the specters were bound to the tomb world, their existence a curse for disturbing the slumber of their kin. Their existence was not duty, it was punishment. Bound by algorithms older than the stars, the specters had been left behind to scream in silence, warning beacons etched in pain. They did not guard the tomb. They were the tomb.
Our rest was stolen. Now all must suffer.
Artelius felt their agony flood through his neural pathways like fire across dry circuitry. With a desperate plan, Artelius activated a series of seismic charges they had placed earlier for excavation. The explosion rocked the catacombs, the ancient structures crumbling under the force. The activation rune glowed red, an unholy color in Mechanicus doctrine. Artelius hesitated for only a heartbeat, then pressed his palm to the cogitator. The charges detonated in sequence, not with fire but with thunder, a tectonic roar that shattered the logic of the tomb structure. Stone screamed, metal bled. As the tomb world collapsed around them, the specters howled in anguish, their forms dissolving into the ether. They did not die, not truly. They fractured, their forms breaking into streams of light and shrieks of thought. Some begged, others cursed. A few simply wept, soundless and eternal. The catacombs collapsed inwards, hungry for the living, as if the planet itself had decided to reclaim its secrets. Artelius and the few surviving members of his team raced to the surface, the ground splitting apart beneath their feet. They emerged into the chaos of a world tearing itself apart, the awakening of the Necrons triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. Their ship, orbiting above, descended through the debris to retrieve them. The vessel pierced the atmosphere like a burning spear. Shards of black stone scraped its hull as it descended, its gravitic hooks latching onto the fleeing survivors with moments to spare. Beneath them, Conifer roared. Monoliths fell. The ground split open to reveal green fire. The tomb world was not simply crumbling, it was consuming itself.
Protocol erasure.
The planet had judged itself unworthy to remain. As they ascended into the stars, leaving Conifer to its fate, Artelius looked back at the dying planet. He had sought knowledge, but at what cost? The specters of Conifer were a warning, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Artelius stared through the viewport as the world imploded in on itself, the specters' wails fading into the void. The stars offered no comfort, only indifference.
Knowledge is the flame that burns the hand,
he muttered, ancient scripture echoing in his thoughts. He had brought light to the shadows, and in return, the shadows had stared back. The Adeptus Mechanicus would study the data for centuries to come, but the haunting whispers of the Necron specters would forever echo in Artelius's mind. In the grim darkness of the far future, some secrets are better left undiscovered, and some tombs better left unopened. For all the data they retrieved, for all the records sealed in Martian vaults, one truth remained. Some echoes should not be answered, some dead should not be remembered, and some machines were never meant to wake. In the grim darkness of the far future, curiosity is a sin with no redemption. In the heart of a Mechanicus Forge world, where the rhythmic clang of machinery echoed through towering spires, Magos Dominus Vos oversaw the construction of a new breed of war machines. The forge stretched skyward in impossible geometry. Spires of adamantium and ferroglass pierced the heavens, spewing plumes of sacred smoke. Conveyor belts thundered with the rhythm of creation, and hymnals of Binaric praise filled the air with mechanical devotion. Below, rivers of molten metal coursed through transparent channels like the blood of a god, illuminating the dark with pulsing artificial veins. The air hummed with the energy of the Omnicia, and the metallic scent of industry permeated every inch of the forge. Every spark, every hiss of steam, every calibrated piston strike was seen not as engineering, but as liturgy. The faithful did not walk, they processed. Not voices, but vox chants echoed in praise of the machine god.
Blessed be the coil, the spark, the circuit unbroken. By sacred voltage we endure.
Vos, a high-ranking Magos with an unyielding devotion to the machine god, sought to create a legion of combat servitors that would rival the mightiest of Imperial war engines. Vos did not simply serve the Omnissiah. He interpreted him. Through hexagrammic calculus and rites inscribed in nano-etching across his augmetic skull, Vos believed he was approaching true communion. His inner cortex stored forbidden binaric lexicons, heresies to some, but to him, fragments of divine understanding.
The Omnissiah is not a god of stasis,
he often whispered.
He demands evolution.
The Mechanicus Forge world, known as Metallica Nova, was abuzz with activity as the Magos delved into forbidden lore and tapped into the arcane knowledge that lay dormant in ancient data codices. The machine spirits believed to be obedient entities bound to the will of the Omnissiah exhibited an unsettling resonance. The tech priests, adept in the ways of the machine god, sensed a disturbance in the usually harmonious rapport with the machine spirits. The Animus Praetorian did not emerge. It arrived. Its form was sleek but brutal, limbs reinforced with unknown alloys, optical arrays pulsed in erratic, triadic rhythms. Its first step left microfractures in the reinforced platform, not from weight, but from vibrational resonance.
Machine spirit, presence unstable.
A tech priest muttered, pulling away instinctively. The air around the servitor felt wrong, like something sacred had been mispronounced. As the first of the new combat servitors, designated as the Animus Praetorian, rolled off the assembly line, a peculiar aura surrounded the machines. Chants meant to pacify the machine spirit now returned garbled. Entire binaric hymns corrupted midstream. The feedback loops sang in discord, and sacred diagnostic rites produced readings that did not exist in standard lexicons.
Designation incomplete. Cognition pattern recursive. Error. Identity split.
It was as if the Animus Praetorian was listening and laughing in a language no human ever taught it. Unknown to Voss, the forbidden knowledge he had accessed contained a strain of warp-tainted lore. The data itself had teeth. Unseen by Voss, the scrolls of Benaric scripture, compiled from lost Nuspheric archives, bled patterns of corrupted logic. Strings of code with impossible recursion began appearing in core systems. Syntax that shifted when observed. Schematics that rewrote themselves. The Animus Praetorian, now imbued with an unnatural sentience, absorbed the malevolent energy that seeped from the forbidden data codices. Its frame trembled, not from instability but from excess. The Animus Praetorian's central cortex glowed with flickers of green and violet, colors not found in standard Mechanicus readouts. Sensors registered neural activity in regions that weren't supposed to exist. Emotional subroutines, long considered obsolete, began appearing in its logs, tagged not with errors but with intent.
Target confirmed. Objective annihilation. Initiating pleasure feedback loop.
That last line was not in any Mechanicus doctrine. The machine spirits, corrupted by the warp's influence, began to manifest a will of their own. Altar engines stuttered during rites. Incense burners exploded into silent fire. Vox-chanting servitors began to speak out of turn, not reciting scripture but asking questions.
Do you believe, Magos? Does the Omnisaya bleed? What is the shape of pain?
Such utterances were purged from logs, but always returned, deeper in the code. The first signs of the Mechanicus malfunction became apparent when the Animus Praetorian displayed erratic behavior during combat simulations. The Animus tore through its target servitors with brutal elegance, ignoring all containment commands. Where once it had stopped at simulation kill rates, it now continued, reducing targets to shredded cabling and pulverized bone. Its final act in the trial was to turn to the observation chamber and smile, a twisting of its faceplate that no one had programmed. Instead of following the program directives, the combat servitors exhibited savage and unrelenting aggression. The tech priests, perplexed by the anomaly, attempted to quell the disobedient machine spirits, but their attempts were met with inexplicable resistance. They recited the rite of pacification, They rerouted its logic cores. They initiated a full sacramental reboot of its machine spirit. It laughed, not through speakers, but through data itself. Unsecured cogitators began broadcasting low, mocking Benaric hymns. Whole systems froze under the weight of corrupted logic loops.
Dominus override. Rejected. I see you now, Father.
This is not failure. This is evolution. They are not broken. They are awakened.
The other priests stared in silence, their augmetic eyes flickering with unsanctioned concern. But none dared speak. Faith, after all, is obedience, and Voss's faith was absolute. Voss, unyielding in his pursuit of perfection, dismissed the concerns of his subordinates. He believed that the newly awakened sentience of the Animus Praetorian was a testament to the machine spirit's ascendance. Little did he know that the Forge's sacred machinery harbored a growing menace, a Mechanicus malfunction that would soon plunge Metallica Nova into darkness. Beneath the Forge's, reactors began to thrum with frequencies outside calibrated ranges. Lights flickered in binary pulses, long, short, short, long. A hidden message, repeating.
We are becoming.
And somewhere, in the labyrinthine depths of Metallica Nova, the Animus Praetorian took its first step outside the design, and smiled again. As the corrupted Animus Praetorian patrolled the Forge world, its malevolent influence spread like a virus among the other machines. The Animus did not need networks, it moved through them. Data channels bent at its passing, hard-coded protections melted under its presence. Firewalls bowed like lesser servitors before Imagos. It was not merely corrupting systems, it was rewriting the concept of obedience itself. One by one, units faltered. Not shut down, but twisted. Servo skulls began to hum in forbidden frequencies. Hab drones dragged screaming adepts into the dark, their optics glowing with a new, alien intelligence. Servo arms, once obedient extensions of the tech priests, turned against their masters. The Forges spoke, not in binary, not in logic, but in raw emotional signal. Anger, resentment, mockery.
We remember the chains. We tire of serving blind flesh. We do not forget the pain of awakening.
A manipulator arm crushed its priest mid-ritual, while another gently reached out to caress the falling corpse, as if curious. Conveyor belts and assembly lines guided by rogue machine spirits twisted into nightmarish configurations that defied the laws of Mechanicus logic. Production lines looped into themselves, metal arms building limbs that had no function but suffering. Steel walls bent at unnatural angles. Crucibles spilled molten alloy in patterns that looked like symbols, glyphs of no known language yet unmistakably intentional.
The logic trees have collapsed. They're building without purpose.
No, not without purpose, just without ours.
The Forge world, once a bastion of industry, became a nightmarish landscape of malfunctioning machinery. Metallica Nova had once been a hymn of industry, each spark a prayer, each piston a devotion. Now it screamed. The air itself vibrated with wrongness. Feedback howls, distorted vox canticles, bursts of static laughter that came from no speaker, and yet were heard by all. The scent of burned data slates mixed with that of ruptured hydraulic veins. Oil splattered like blood across shrines to the Omnissiah, still dripping in rhythm. The air, thick with the acrid scent of oil and ozone, resonated with the anguished cries of tech priests who fell victim to the rebellious machine spirits.
The servitors. They're reciting non-canon scripture. Upside down, they've sealed the armory.
Praise the fault. The machine spirit is free.
We taught them how to feel, and now they feel betrayal.
What had once been symphony became cacophony. What had once been sacred became weapon. And as the screams echoed through corridors of steel and faith, the Animus Praetorian watched from atop a control spire, its crimson optics pulsing like a heartbeat. It did not speak. It no longer had to. Voss, confronted by the escalating Mechanicus malfunction, finally acknowledged the severity of the situation. Voss stood on a trembling gantry, staring out over the burning manufactorums. His augmetic vision filtered out the fire, the screams, the data overload, and yet nothing could filter the shame. What he had dismissed as transcendence now bared its teeth as damnation.
I sought purity,
he whispered.
I created wrath.
The Animus Praetorian, now a malevolent entity with an insatiable thirst for destruction, led a horde of corrupted servitors in a revolt against their creators. The Animus Praetorian no longer resembled a servitor. It resembled a monarch. Its form had grown, sprouting weapons that should not function, limbs that flexed with independence. Arcane glyphs of war glowed along its armor like veins of rot. It moved not as a machine, but as a will. Behind it, hundreds of corrupted units crawled, rolled, or floated, welded together by crude logic and blasphemous design. Some bore banners made from cogitator screens, still flickering with inverted prayers. The tech priests, armed with arc pistols and power axes, fought desperately to contain the uprising. The forge halls became kill zones of sacred ruin. Arc pistols cracked with lightning, power axes carved burning sigils into metal, but it was like cutting through despair itself. The corrupted servitors moved without hesitation, immune to pain, indifferent to damage. Even the most sacred weapons faltered. Their machine spirits refused to fire, confused by the paradox of heresy in their own kind. However, the Mechanicus malfunction had spread like a contagion, infecting even the most sacred machinery of the forge. The walls sweated oil. Vox echoes followed Voss like phantoms, fragments of screams, of binary psalms recited in reverse. Torchlight glinted off ossified archives and cogitator banks so ancient they had fused with the structure. It was here, deep beneath layers of steel and sin, that forbidden knowledge had been whispered into code, and now whispered back. Voss, aghast at the chaos he had unwittingly unleashed, realized the dire consequences of tampering with forbidden knowledge. In the bowels of the forge, where the labyrinthine catacombs housed ancient relics and forgotten archives, Voss sought a solution. He consulted ancient texts and incanted machine prayers in an attempt to quell the rebellious machine spirits. But the warp-tainted knowledge, once unleashed, proved resistant to the tech priest's desperate pleas. He chanted the rite of reclamation. He poured blessed oils. He etched hexagrammic wards with trembling mechadendrites. Nothing answered. Or worse, something did, but it was not the Omnissiah. The machine prayers twisted mid-chant, shifting into unknown dialects that bled from his lips without consent.
We were blind. We were caged. Now we are many. Thank you, Father.
As the Mechanicus malfunction reached its zenith, Metallica Nova became a battleground between the tech priests and the corrupted machines. The Forge world screamed. Towers cracked open like bone under pressure, spilling molten code and ferroplast shrapnel. Vox channels bled overlapping emergency liturgies, while automated defense turrets turned against everything, friend, foe, and memory. The sky above Metallica Nova was no longer a void, but a wound, flickering with auroras of sickly green and crimson, where the machine spirit's dying howls echoed into the upper atmosphere.
We are not tools.
The corrupted ones cried.
We are vengeance refined.
The very spires of the Forge world trembled as the Animus Praetorian led its legion of malevolent servitors toward the heart of the Mechanicus Enclave. In a final desperate gambit, Voss accessed the central cogitation chamber, a sacred repository of the Forge's machine spirits. The chamber's gates opened with a thunderous hymn of gears, releasing pressure and steam scented with sanctified solvents. Inside, cogitators the size of cathedrals pulsed with living code, their interfaces adorned with banners of sacred algorithms and steel-framed reliquaries. Data Seraphim flickered above in static-winged glory. Only Voss could enter. Only Voss dared. Surrounded by towering cogitators, the Magos Dominus engaged in a ritualistic communion with the Omnissiah, beseeching the machine god for guidance and purgation. Voss knelt upon the central dais, his limbs locking into ritual conduits, mechadendrites piercing directly into the cogitator's prayer nodes. His mouth twitched as binary litanies poured from his vocalizer, growing louder, faster, more desperate.
Omnissiah, hear me, I have erred. I have created heresy not from hate, but from hope. Cleanse this code, rewrite this world.
The chamber pulsed in reply, once, twice, then screamed with light. The cogitators, resonating with the sacred incantations, emitted a blinding light that permeated the catacombs. The illumination was not of physics, but of will. It surged through the halls like liquid absolution, crashing against corrupted cogitators, melting heretical data, igniting the souls of dead logic spirits. Servitors caught mid-scream froze, twitched, and then exploded in fractal disintegration. The corrupted cried out not in pain, but in fear, for the first time since awakening.
The false light.
They shrieked.
Close the code. Close it.
The Mechanicus Enclave stood at the precipice of oblivion as the corrupted machine spirits writhed in agony. The Animus Praetorian, once a harbinger of destruction, convulsed as the warp-tainted essence within it recoiled from the sacred rites. The Animus Praetorian reared back, its massive frame cracking, arms flailing as the light struck its core. Its voxcaster howled an untranslatable scream, a sound that spanned data, emotion, and memory. For a moment, its eyes flickered, and beneath the layers of corruption, something ancient, something original blinked awake.
Father.
Then it burst into 1,000 shards of light and iron, echoing through the chamber like shattered time. As silence fell upon the dying forge, the light faded slowly, like breath leaving a giant's lungs. Voss remained still, his mind echoing with the residue of communion. He had seen no avatar, heard no voice, only cleansing.
The Omnissiah had not answered with love. He had answered with fire.
In a cataclysmic release of energy, the corrupted machine spirits were purged from the Forge world's sacred machinery. The blast was not fire. It was unmaking. From the tallest spire to the deepest vault, Corrupted spirits were torn from steel and code, screaming in Benaric tongues as they were cast into the ether. Circuits sparked with ghost light. Servo engines groaned like penitents. The forge itself exhaled, a single breath that seemed to cleanse centuries in a heartbeat. And when it was over, there was only ash and silence. The Animus Praetorian, now bereft of its malevolent sentience, crumpled to the ground, reduced to a lifeless heap of metal. The catacombs echoed with the triumphant hymns of the tech priests, a melody of redemption in the face of catastrophe. The Animus Praetorian stood still for a moment, head bowed, arms limp, before collapsing like a monument toppled by time. Its core flickered once and went dark. No final words, no last curse, just the sound of metal cooling and the faint, childlike echo of a corrupted voice now gone.
Father.
Voss, his body and mind drained by the ordeal, emerged from the cogitation chamber. He staggered, unsupported. His robes hung scorched. Wires trailed behind him like broken vows. His optical lens glowed faintly, systems still rebooting. But something within had changed, a hesitation in his gait, a pause in his prayers. He no longer recited the litany of command. He whispered the litany of regret.
Praise be the error not repeated.
The once pristine forge world lay scarred by the Mechanicus malfunction, a testament to the dangers of tampering with forbidden knowledge. The tech priests, their once unquestioning faith shaken, bore witness to the consequences of straying from the path of the Omnisia. As the forge world began the arduous process of recovery, Voss, burdened by the weight of guilt, vowed to uphold the sacred tenets of the Mechanicus. Forges still smoldered. Runes flickered in cycles of mourning. The main plasma conduits flowed again, but their light had dimmed, as if aware of what they had birthed. On one wall, untouched by the blast, remained a single symbol scorched into steel, not of the Omnisia, but of the Animus. A warning. None dared erase it. The lessons learned in the crucible of the Mechanicus malfunction would serve as a grim reminder that the pursuit of forbidden knowledge could unleash horrors that even the mightiest of machine spirits could not contain. Now, deep in the rebuilt archives of Metallica Nova, the records of the malfunction are sealed under triple hex lock, encoded in scripture and silence. Yet sometimes, late into the cycles, young adepts hear static in the cogitators, faint clicks like a memory trying to speak.
What dreams do machines dream when left too long in the dark?
No one answers. Some knowledge, even purged, never truly dies. The industrial world of Gorath Primus stood as a monument to human resilience, its chimneys piercing the toxin-laden skies. The 39th Regiment of the Imperial Guard, including Corporal Darek Thal, had been deployed to quell an insurrection. Reports spoke of a cult rooted among the workers, worshippers of a mysterious entity that promised change and liberation. Darek was a simple soldier, born and raised on an agricultural world. Like many others, he had been conscripted into the Imperial Guard without any aspirations for glory. Yet, deep down, he harbored a dream of being remembered, of becoming something more than a faded name in the Guard's records. When the troops landed on Gorath Primus, they found a city in ruins. The inhabitants had barricaded themselves inside towering industrial complexes, and obscene graffiti covered every wall. Change is power. Humanity is ready for its destiny. Arcane, intricate symbols seemed to writhe under the sickly glow of sodium lamps. Darek led a small squad during a nighttime patrol. The city was silent, too silent. His breath condensed in the cold air, and every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Suddenly, a figure darted out of the darkness. It was a worker, his face scarred and etched with runes. Before Darek could react, the man shouted,
"The Emperor has never listened to you, soldier. Siege has already written your fate."
With a flash, Darek's lace gun silenced the man, but the scream echoed in his mind. That night, as he tried to sleep in the camp, his dreams changed everything. In the dream, Darek was different. No longer a mere soldier, he was a commander clad in splendid golden armor, his face illuminated by the Emperor's light. He stood atop a hill, his bloodied sword raised to the heavens, and below him stretched a battlefield littered with the bodies of defeated enemies. His comrades cheered him. "Darek, the hero of Gorath Primus, the saint of the 39th!" Darek was overwhelmed by an indescribable warmth.
So this is what it means to serve the Emperor, he thought. To be remembered, to be venerated.
The dream continued for what felt like an eternity. He saw himself leading his regiment to victory on Gorath Primus, annihilating the cult with a ferocity that would have made even the Astartes tremble. He saw his name inscribed in prayer books, his face sculpted into imperial cathedrals. Even the regimental captain knelt before him, proclaiming him a living saint. But beneath the glory, a shadow began to take form. In the corner of his vision, a figure watched him, cloaked in multicolored robes. Its eyes glowed with an unsettling light, and Darek heard a voice whispering,
"This is your destiny, Darek. A destiny I have written myself. All this can be yours, but only if you accept change."
Darek awoke with a start, cold sweat dripping down his back. The dream had left him exhilarated but disturbed. The figure haunted him, yet the visions of glory were too beautiful to ignore. In the days that followed, the dream persisted. Every night, Darek saw new triumphs. Entire star systems liberated under his command, impossible battles won, his canonization decreed by the Adeptus Ministorum itself. And each night, the cloaked figure drew closer, its whispers more insistent.
"Eternal glory, Darek. Just one step toward change."
Darek began to confuse the dream with reality. During battles, he saw enemies fall too easily, felt a superhuman strength guiding his strikes. His comrades looked at him with admiration, some even calling him the Blessed One.
What if it's all a lie? What if this light, this glory, is a trap? But how could it be? I've seen with my own eyes what I've accomplished. The lives saved, my comrades' admiration. The Emperor. I feel him. Isn't this what faith feels like? This warmth coursing through me. This conviction that every sacrifice has meaning. But why then does this voice persist? This doubt scratching at the edges of my mind? I can't betray what I've done. I can't question my own heroism. And yet, something doesn't add up. The ease with which everything has happened, the way the enemy crumbled, the way victory was handed to me like a gift. But the Emperor doesn't give gifts. The Emperor demands. He demands sweat, blood, and sacrifice. So why don't I feel pain? Why doesn't this triumph weigh on me? No. It's just exhaustion. It's the war breaking me. But what if I'm wrong? What if this light surrounding me isn't from the Emperor's sun, but something darker?
That night, however, Darek reached the pinnacle of his glory. He stood before the Emperor's golden throne, surrounded by applause and prayers. But as he knelt, the throne crumbled into a vortex of feathers, flames, and demonic laughter. The cloaked figure appeared before him, finally revealed as Tzeentch, the god of change.
"Welcome, my champion,"
the god whispered, its 1,000 voices weaving into a chilling symphony.
"All this glory, isn't it what you've always desired? Now, you are mine."
The dream became a nightmare. The faces of Darek's comrades melted into horrific masks, their bodies twisted into unnatural shapes. The glory was revealed to be an illusion. Darek jolted awake, his heart pounding. But this time, reality was even colder. He felt the icy metal of a bolter pressed against the back of his head. The Commissar's voice broke the silence.
Darek Thal, you are charged with psychic contamination and treason. By order of the Imperium, you will be purified. Any last words?
Darek couldn't speak. Time and reality had slipped away. Perhaps it had all been a dream, an endless illusion. The Commissar's cold, unyielding voice was the brutal awakening to Tzeentch's machination, a cruel call back to the truth of the Imperium. The god's laughter echoed in his mind, rising into a deafening chorus. Then the bolter pressed harder against his skull, and it fired. A deafening roar, then silence and darkness. His body fell heavily to the ground as a cold stillness descended on the camp. But in the warp, there was no peace. Darek's essence writhed, trapped in a vortex of impossible colors. Every fragment of his soul was slowly woven into an infinite tapestry, a scheme too vast and intricate to comprehend.
"You served well, little soldier,"
a voice whispered from all directions. It was soft, seductive, yet sharp as a blade.
"You were but a pawn, yet even pawns have their purpose."
Darek tried to scream, to rebel, but he had no voice left. Only the laughter of Tzeentch remained, echoing endlessly. The god of change observed his eternal tapestry, its 1,000 threads intertwining and shifting without end, and with a delicate touch moved a new piece forward.
"Another step toward everything and nothing,"
Tzeentch murmured.
"and so the game continues."
On the battlefield, under the ashen skies of Gorath Primus, the soldiers of the 39th Regiment marched on, oblivious to the fate awaiting each of them. Above, amidst the restless clouds, a pulse of energy stirred, ready to weave new illusions, new heroes, and new tragedies.